Introducing Robin Curtis in the role of Lieutenant Saavik, guest appearances by no less than Dame Judith Anderson, Christopher Lloyd, John Larroquette, and a whole host of others. 1984, Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. There is, in those early movies, Star Trek 2, 3, and 4, this set that is sometimes referred to by fandom as the Genesis trilogy. The Genesis device figuring in The Wrath of Khan, Star Trek 3, Star Trek 4 being more or less where they've ended up because of the events of those other two movies coming to a conclusion and wrapping up with them on a new enterprise. Star Trek 3, sandwiched right in the middle of this three-movie trilogy, dealing with the Genesis device. Spock has died in The Wrath of Khan, and now we have to bring him back. The movie Star Trek III does not get a lot of respect, even among fans, be honest. A lot of that has to do with the fact that it is completely contrived. Well, what does that mean when you're talking about fiction and science fiction? Well, we all know, famously and infamously, Leonard Nimoy had a love-hate relationship at one time with his role as Spock. Whatever the details are of that, you can research that in other biographies, etc. But they did a fabulous job of killing him off in The Wrath of Khan. They made it every bit as dramatic as it needed to be. I mean, it remains one of those moments in cinema generally and popular culture that is recognizable. It's right up there with finding the Statue of Liberty sticking out of the dirt at the end of Planet of the Apes. I mean, it's the sort of thing everybody knows about Spock's death and the clear wall, transparent wall, and the whole exchange between them about their friendship. So they gave Spock the send-off that Spock deserved. It was good for the franchise as well to do it that well and heroically. You already had the character Saavik if you wanted a Vulcan to step into the role, and there you go. Then they bring Spock back to life. And everything about it is very much contrived. They have to make things up as they go in order to make it work. Now, the Genesis wave regenerates the body because they had ejected him into space when the Mutara Nebula was becoming this Genesis planet. The only problem with that is it's not there to be, it clearly was not put in the story just in case we need it, because everything we were told about the Genesis device was that it would not do that. The whole danger of it being utilized as a weapon is that it destroys in order to create. It obliterates the matrix of all previous life. The idea that it could resurrect or rejuvenate or recreate somebody's dead corpse is completely made up. It's not consistent with what we knew about the device at the beginning. But you're grasping at straws. Suddenly, Vulcans have a katra. Suddenly, Vulcans have a soul of sorts that can be implanted through a mind meld into a person so that it can be stored at Mount Saleya. And conveniently, in this case, one out of a gazillion, bajillion, Google, Plexion, whatever, his body being miraculously remade by the Genesis wave, the katra being in McCoy, we can do the Fal Torpan, the refusion, and we can get Spock back. So it becomes part of Vulcan lore. It becomes part of Star Trek canon, the katra, Mount Saleya, and all of that. But let's be honest, they completely contrived this at the time of Star Trek III. There's nothing like it before that is mentioned. So we also get, in having a tough time tonight doing this without editing. However, one of the great things about Star Trek III is the incredible performances that we get. Not only is it fun to see John Larroquette from Night Court as a Klingon in this movie, in hindsight, and he does a good enough job in that, and there's some little bit of comedic relief in his interchanges with Kirk, but Christopher Lloyd being the Klingon Commander Krug. Christopher Lloyd, we think of him as Back to the Future or any sort of comedic roles, but my goodness, he was an amazing Klingon commander, villain, ruthless, and bloodthirsty and tough. He really does a fabulous job. And you talk about a hard act to follow. Coming after Star Trek II, you were never going to have anything as dramatic as Khan, both because of the history in the franchise of Khan and also Ricardo Montalban being Ricardo Montalban. But in this Star Trek III, we get Commander Krug, and we have to keep in mind it's the first good look that we really got of Klingon culture in the movie era. It's easy to overlook that now because Klingons are overdone to the point of becoming, I don't know, they almost don't carry the weight that they used to because everybody loved them and we're into them, and there's all this stuff from video games and comic books and shows have delved into it. But we had seen Klingons a number of times in the original series. Then we saw them at the beginning of the motion picture fighting V'ger. But we did, other than that brief look of them fighting V'ger, we did not really know much about the Klingons. They do not feature heavily in the motion picture. They don't feature at all. They're mentioned at the beginning of the Wrath of Khan during the Kobayashi Maru test. Wow. But now in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, we finally get Klingons up close and for a period of time. We see our first Klingon Targ, by the way, a pet of Captain Krug's that is on the bridge and all nasty and slimy and all of that good stuff. It's also one of the great movies for William Shatner as Kirk. Now, William Shatner really, I believe, reaches his peak as an actor during this Genesis trilogy. He was not known for all of the adventurism and excitement and the raw power of Captain Kirk in the original series. Bill Shatner was not known for like an acting range on that. It's sort of become a cultural joke about how he could overact and over-dramatize things, but he really was bringing a whole level of seriousness to something that, being in a sci-fi setting at that era, it should have been elevating it, but it almost felt like he was over the top. And of course, like I said, that's culturally kind of known, but he really hits it out of the park. And I think it's because it's every actor, you reach that point where you're playing somebody in a role that is where you are in life. And he's started to get a little bit older. He's getting more mature. He's playing a more mature Kirk. And this is the Kirk that doesn't always escape, who doesn't always save the day, at least not in the same way. Kirk still has that ability, and that magnetic draw to him is as this heroic, almost superhero figure that will pull your fat out of the fire and save the day if only Captain Kirk is in charge. But whereas the series, he comes through largely unscathed, now in the movies, he doesn't. He begins to lose things. He loses Spock in the Wrath of Khan. He has to deal with the wrath that comes from Khan. That was funny. He has to deal with all of the people that die in the battle, the damage to his ship, and finally losing Spock. And then we get into Star Trek III with this remote possibility of getting Spock back and all of this incredible stuff. But he's got to steal his ship and sacrifice his career, ultimately destroy his ship. His son ends up dead. And he has that great breakdown on the bridge of calling Krug a Klingon bastard. Ooh. It's some of the best acting we see in the whole set of movies, and really some of the best action sequences. The destruction of the Enterprise is a classic, but leaving it to blow up so when the Klingons are on board, it blows up. Being able to say to Krug, sorry about your crew, but as we say on Earth, c'est la vie. It's really incredible stuff. The security guards referring to Sulu as Tiny when they go to break out McCoy, that whole Excelsior sort of subplot storyline, just there's so much good stuff in this movie, despite the fact that it's completely contrived and it ends up where you knew it was going to end up. Spock's going to come back to life. You knew that by the title. You knew that's what they were doing. And it really is this story that's just plugged in there. Like, oh man, he's going to come back. They did such a good job of the send-off, but you can't pass up the opportunity of having him back for that franchise. So you end up doing this movie with all these contrivances to undo what you've already done But in the end, you're going to get Spock back, and you're going to lead into Star Trek 4. So I really think it doesn't get the respect that it deserves. It has so much good stuff in it. I enjoy watching it every time I see it. And go back and check it out. Let me know what you think. Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Peace and long life.